Daf Yomi tractate Shevuos, Shavuot, Daf 9b, Daf Tes Amid Beis. Okay. Maybe that should be my opening, line, opening song, the TV show. The credits come up. We're already into one line here of 9b. We're at the words Ella ket amar Rabbi Chama bar Rabbi Chanina. Sa'ir u'sa'ir. Hachanami sa'ir u'sa'ir. Yistagar sa'ir eragol. Yisir rosh chadoshim. Ma sa'ir rosh chadoshim en hachaber ela ali she'en. V'yediya v'lam tzkila v'soi. V'sa'ir hagolim. Ein hachaber ela she'en. V'yediya v'lam tzkila v'sof. Rather, the atonement of the goats of the festivals is derived. Just as Rabbi Chama, the son of Rabbi Chanina, says, in explanation of the opinion of Rabbi Meir, C10a. The matter is derived from the fact that, with regard to the goat of the festivals, see Numbers chapter 28 and 29, the verses that mention the goat could have simply said a goat, but instead, by the way, a goat in English gematria equals blood, 44. Yeah. Blood equals 44, and a goat equals 44. But instead say and a goat here too. The fact that the verse could have simply stated a goat, but instead states and a goat, indicates that the goats of the festivals are juxtaposed with the goat of the new moon, which are mentioned at the beginning of that passage. It teaches that they all effect a similar atonement, just as the goats of the new moon atone only for cases in which one did not have awareness, neither at the beginning nor at the end. So too, the goats of the festivals atone only for cases in which one did not have awareness, neither at the beginning nor the end. Ki amar Rabbi Yehuda al she'en v'yediya lo b'tchila v'sof. Hani min v'chet she'sofer livada. Aval chet she'sofer livada kemi she'yesh yediya v'sof. Dami. V'sa'ir na'anaseh achutz. ביום הכיפורים מחפר או דילמה אפילו חטא שסופו היוודע השתה מהחטא שאין מכיר בו אלא השם קרינה בה. A dilemma was raised before the sages when Rabbi Yehuda says that the goats of the new moons and the festivals atone for cases in which one did not have awareness, neither at the beginning nor at the end. Does that statement apply only to a sin that will never eventually become known? For example, where no one was present when the person became ritually impure, but with regard to a sin that will eventually become known, it is considered to be like a case of one who has awareness of his sin at the end, and therefore only the goat whose blood presentation is performed outside the sanctuary, and Yom Kippur itself atone for it. Or perhaps, even with regard to a sin that will eventually become known, right now at least, before it becomes known, I can call it a sin of which only God is aware. And therefore the goats of the new moon and the festivals do atone for it. So get the question. Toshima, we're going to attempt to resolve this dilemma, or maybe conclude, maybe this is where it resolves. Tashma detanya al she'en ba yediya v'lo b'tchila v'lo b'sof achet she'sofer livada se'irei ha'relim zrei rosh chadoshim mechaprim divrei Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara concludes, come and hear a resolution from this dilemma, as is taught from this Braita. It's taught in Braita a resolution of this dilemma, as it is taught in Braita, for a case in which one did not have awareness, neither at the beginning nor at the end, and it is a sin that will eventually become known. The goats of the festivals and the goats of the new moons atone. Yes, they do atone. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Seirei ha'alanim lechabrim, aval lo seirei choshech hadoshim. The Mishnah teaches that Rabbi Shimon says the goats of the festivals atone for a case in which one never had awareness of his transgression. But the goats of the new moons do not. Rather, the latter atone for a ritually pure person who unwittingly partook of ritually impure sacrificial food. Amar Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yehoshua, my time Rabbi Shimon. Amar Kra, Vilta natan lechem laset, no, Vilta natan lechem leseet et avon ha'ida. V'hai Kra b'Yisrael Rosh Chodesh Ksiv v'yalif avon mitzitz nemar kan avon v'nemer halan avon ma lehalan tumas bosor afkan tumas bosor. The Gemara elaborates. Rabbi Elazar says, Rabbi Yehoshua says, what is the reasoning of Rabbi Shimon? The verse states, and he gave it to you, to bear the sin of the congregation, Leviticus 10:17. And this verse is written with regard to the goat of the new moon. And its capacity to atone is derived from the front plate, through which a verbal analogy between the word sin in this verse and the word sin stated with regard to the front plate. The verse there states, and it shall be on Aaron's forehead, and Aaron will bear the sin of the sacred offerings. Exodus 28:38. Aaron will bear the sin of the sacred offerings? Exodus 28:38. The verbal analogy teaches as follows. It is stated there with regard to the goat of the new moon, sin, and it is stated there with regard to the front plate, sin, just as there in the verse in Exodus. The atonement is for a sin involving the ritual impurity of sacrificial meat, meaning where such meat is placed on the altar, so too here. In the verse in Leviticus, the atonement is for a sin involving the ritual impurity of sacrificial meat, meaning where a ritually pure person partakes of it. The Gemara asks, if the two cases are to be compared, then one could take the comparison further. Just as there in the verse in Exodus, the atonement is only for meat that ascends upon the altar, so to here in the verse in Leviticus, the atonement is only for meat that ascends upon the altar. The Gemara rejects this suggestion. It is written with regard to the goat of the new moon, to bear the sin of the congregation. This indicates that it atones for the personal sin of partaking of sacrificial meat that was to be consumed by an individual which became ritually impure. Mefdi, let's see. The Gemara suggests now the atonement of the goats of the new moon and of the front plate are derived from one another by a verbal analogy. If so, let the goat of the new moon atone for itself, meaning for the cases that it normally atones for, and for that which the front plate normally atones for, and the practical difference will be in a case where the front plate was broken. The Gemara answers, the verse states, with regard to the goat of the new moon, to bear the sin of the congregation, which indicates that it bears, meaning atones for, only one sin. But it does not bear two sins. Unechaper tzis alidei ad rosh chodesh nafki minot zomad adre tumad de are ben zenozeh amakra v'ita ota noseh avoin ben acheret noseh avoin. The Gemara suggests, but let's see, we read before it says, bear the sin of the congregation, which indicates that it atones for one sin, but it doesn't bear for two sins. Okay, I think you read that. I'll just read it again anyway. The Gemara suggests now the atonement of the goat to the new moon, and that front plate are derived from one's analogy of analogy. Let the goat of the new moon atone for itself, for the cases it normally atones for, and for that which the front plate normally atones for. The practical difference will be in the case where the front plate was broken. The Gemara answers, the verse states with regard to the goat of the new moon to bear the sin of the congregation, which indicates that it bears, meaning atones for, only one sin, but it does not bear two sins. When the Chaper tzitz of the idea, Chadash. Naf ben lo tumedare ben zerzeh amal kla isa otana zevo and ben acher zevo. The Gemara suggests, but let the front plate atone for itself, meaning for those cases that it normally atones for, and for that which the goats of the new moon normally atone for, and the practical difference will be in a case of the defiling of the temple or its sacrificial foods that occurred between the goat offering this new moon and that new moon which follows. The Gemara answers, the verse states with regard to the goat of the new moon, and he gave it to you to bear the sin of the congregation, which indicates that it bears, meaning atones for, that sin, but another does not bear that sin. Ravashi Amar Ksivacha Bonaida Eda Belo Kadashim Hasan Ksiv Eda Avoida Kadashim Belo Eda. Ravashi states another proof for the opinion that each atones in a different case. It's stated here with regard to the goat of the new moon, the sin of the congregation, which indicates that it atones for the sin of the congregation, but not for the sin involving sacred offerings. And there, with regard to the front plate, is written the sin of the sacred offerings, which indicates that it atones for the sin involving sacred offerings, but not for the sin of the congregation. The Gemara says, we found a source for Rabbi Shimon's opinion about the goats of the new moons, that they atone for a ritually pure person who partook of ritually impure sacrificial food. From where do we derive his opinion about the goats of the festivals, that they atone for cases of the defiling of the temple or its sacrificial foods in which one did not have awareness, neither at the beginning nor at the end? The Gemara answers, and with this we will conclude. It is derived, conclude the daf for today. From the Gemara answers, it is derived just as Rabbi Chama, son of Rabbi Chanina, says in explanation of the opinion of Rabbi Meir on Tenei, the fact that with regard to the goat of the festivals, the verses that mention the goats could have simply stated a goat, but instead state and a goat, teaches that the goats of the festivals effect an atonement similar to that of the goat of the new moon that is mentioned at the beginning of that passage. Here too, the fact that the verse could have simply stated a goat, but instead states and a goat, teaches that the goats of the festivals affect an atonement similar to that of the goat of the new moon, which is mentioned at the beginning of that passage.